Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 103 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip comes to us from Joe Apfelbaum.
What you have to understand is you must prepare. That means you must write your script out. You see, I have a rap that really makes me stand out. And most people don't know this, but my rap is something that I wrote out. People think that I can just freestyle. And sure, I could freestyle, but it won't sound good. People want you to perform for them. So if you show up on stage and it's the first time that you're on stage and you had nothing prepared and the music goes on and you're just making noises instead of giving everyone a performance, you're going to suck. If you want to feel good, you got to prepare. I could sing you a rap that I prepared. My name is Joe. I'm the LinkedIn pro. Everybody out there, they just want to grow, but they're not posting. They're just coasting. Don't be like them and get your LinkedIn toasting. To be an influencer and not just a lurker, you need to start to post and don't be like most. But you might say that LinkedIn doesn't work. You don't work because you dabble and lurk. 500 million people lurk. They don't network. A small percentage even acts like a jerk. But you're really smart. You're the expert in your field. Now you need to get real deal seal. Then you need that blueprint. You need some plans. Your content is good and you just need fans, people to like, to comment, to share. Put yourself out there if you dare. Now I used to be afraid and I used to be scared. People would judge me and I would look weird. A strategy, a blueprint. That's what helped me be me. So B to B, yo, check it out now. Check it out now. Check it out now. This is how we do it in the house. That's kind of like what I practice. You're not going to be able to do something like that unless you prepare in advance. So find your thing that you want to be known for, whether it's a poem, whether it's a rap, whether it's a joke. You know, I learned stand-up comedy and I realized the difference between improv and stand-up is that improv, you got to be on the fly. But stand-up, if you're on the fly, you will fail every single time. You got to polish and 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 polish. Jerry Seinfeld is Jerry Seinfeld because he polished for decades. I got up in front of 300 people on the same stage that Jerry Seinfeld got up. And I did my thing, and it was great. But I prepared for hours and hours and hours and hours, and I was nowhere as great as he was. He had the audience being tickled every second. And I got a couple chuckles. I got a couple laughs.
Stick around, and after the break, we'll hear more from Joe Apfelbaum. Joe Apfelbaum is a high-energy force of nature, and that really comes through in this episode. His professional focus is on B2B, or business-to-business marketing, which is something many folks don't think about. He's built a large following and expertise on LinkedIn, and you should definitely check him out there. Joe also just launched a new course dedicated to social selling. You can check that out over at learn.socialsellin.com. And that is sellin without the G. Or just go on over to 2minutetalktips.com/Joe to find that and all the links we'll be talking about. In this episode, one of the things I'd really like you to listen for is Joe's pattern of speech. He uses a lot of repetition and parallel structure to make his points, and it just sounds natural and powerful. I talked about these techniques back in episodes 10 and 39. You'll find links to those also over at 2minutetalktips.com/Joe. It takes practice to do this effectively, and the best way to get better at it is, well, you know, just go ahead and do it, and practice, and rehearse, and do it again. Another lesson, besides preparing and rehearsing, is that when it comes to speaking, again, you just have to get out and do it again, and then do it some more. Joe Apfelbaum is the CEO of Ajax Union, a B2B digital marketing agency based in Brooklyn, New York. Joe is a business strategist, marketing expert, and certified Google trainer. Joe is also the author of his new book, High Energy Secrets: How He Lost 95 Pounds and Has More Energy Than Ever. When he's not mojovating entrepreneurs at events and on social media, he chills in Brooklyn with his wife and 5 kids. So now, Let's meet Joe. Joe, thanks so much for joining me on 2-Minute Talk Tips this week.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to have this amazing conversation.
Well, I certainly hope it lives up to that billing. So I guess one of the first things I want to start off with is you run a B2B digital marketing agency. I think a lot of folks understand what B2C is, business to consumer, but business to business is a little bit more of a gray area for a lot of folks. What does a B2B digital marketing agency do?
So we find companies that are looking to service other companies, a business that's doing business with another business. And what we do is we help them be able to understand how they can acquire new clients in a responsible way. You see, when you're selling something to a consumer, usually there's one person, they usually decide very quickly and they buy right away. But when you're dealing with a company, often you're dealing with many different personalities. You're dealing with decision makers, you're dealing with influencers, you're dealing with the users of the product or service that you're selling. And maybe you're even dealing with the buyers as well. And sometimes you're also dealing with gatekeepers. So there are many different types of what's known as buyer centers. So the sale becomes much more complicated. In addition to that, it also takes much longer to close a sale when you're dealing with B2B because the sales cycle can sometimes be 6 months. Sometimes it could even take a year or 2 years to close a very large deal. So B2B companies typically are investing a lot of money in marketing, and the marketing is more long-term. As we continue to evolve as an agency, we are using a lot of long-term thinking in the way that we operate. So what we do is we come up with a really great strategy for a company to identify their goals, their target market, the right messaging, and then we create a series of assets, which includes lead magnets, landing pages, email automations to create their marketing funnel. And then ultimately we send traffic to that funnel to help nurture leads and to convert leads from the top of the funnel to the bottom line.
So it's a lot of it sounds like building those tools and helping them manage that process and craft that funnel, is a lot about building those resources that an organization may go to when you start talking about landing pages and branding through a website and that sort of core messaging, as opposed to what we think of in B2C, where we start talking more about reaching folks directly through a Facebook campaign or an Instagram campaign or whatever other channel we're going to use to reach individuals through their digital platform. It's more about building a broader set of assets for a B2B organization.
Yeah, and you know what? When you're dealing with B2B, the fastest way to go out of business is just send random traffic to your website. The best customers come from the most ideal prospects that are qualified leads. When you're dealing with B2C, you can spray and pray, right? You can send emails to thousands and thousands of people and people will buy. You can just have random Facebook ads and people will buy. You can have a lot of Google ads and people will buy and you'll be able to see your results right away. But with B2B, because it takes so long to close a deal, you can be dealing with a lot of unqualified leads. You got to be really careful with your process and you got to really focus on conversion optimization before you send traffic. That's why it's so important to have the right strategy, to create the right assets, and then send traffic from SEO, SEM, social, and whichever other way you send traffic.
I used to do a lot of trade shows in my previous life with Toshiba. We would do some shows where you're talking to just the public coming through, and if you weren't talking to a couple hundred people a day, you were not going to be successful. But then you go to the education trade shows where it's more of a B2B play, where you're talking to schools and whatnot. And you don't have to talk to hundreds of people. You can have a great day at that trade show and justify all the expenses if you talk to 3 people, but they're the right 3 people.
Correct. That's absolutely. And I say the same thing when it comes to LinkedIn. I don't know if you know this, but there are 500 million people on LinkedIn. 40% of them are logging in every single day, but only 1 million people are posting. So that means there's a lot of attention on LinkedIn and very few people claiming that attention. So when I tell people become an influencer, I don't mean influence millions of people. Influence your dream 100 clients. Have 100 ideal prospects that you're there in front of them 3 times a day on LinkedIn because nobody else is doing it. It's very, very powerful when you target the right people with the right message at the right time, consistently over and over and over. You're going to get those really large clients and grow your business.
Absolutely. And those leads and those qualified leads can be really valuable. But ultimately, a lot of our success in business still comes from not communicating directly, from a landing page through a screen, but through more of that person-to-person interaction, which is still why public speaking is so important, especially for people working in corporations and organizations that may be talking to other businesses.
Public speaking is one of the most important things that you can leverage as a professional. Why? Because first of all, 90% of people are afraid of public speaking. Those are the statistics. Most people would rather be dead than do public speaking. And the reason is because we hate rejection. We don't want to be rejected. We don't want to be exposed. We don't want to be hurt or shamed or judged or any of that stuff. And public speaking opens you up to all the ridicule, to all the judgment, to all the attention. But the benefits of getting in front of a crowd with your ethos, with your logos, and with your pathos, and really connecting with the audience and taking them through a journey, now you are the real authority. Now you're the real connection. Now they're looking to you to help them be able to take whatever their issue is and solve that issue.
When you open yourself up to that ridicule and that rejection, I mean, that's one of the really interesting things about it is that the vast majority of time, that ridicule is never going to happen.
Yeah, it happens in your own head.
Exactly.
I feel like we all have head trash. And in our own head, we have a bunch of people throwing tomatoes at us. But in reality, nobody else is doing that. Everyone is even more scared than you are. Walk over to one of your audience members and just say, boo! They're going to freak out. You're going to see how scared they are. People are much more scared of the speaker than the speaker is of them. Unless the speaker is afraid, then everybody else looks like a bunch of demons.
So what's your earliest memory of speaking in front of groups of people?
Well, I was always shy. Growing up in school, I remember I used to dread raising my hand to answer a question. At home, whenever anybody asked me to speak in front of the family or in front of a crowd, I would never want to do that. One-on-one, I was great. But I used to say things like, I'm a private person. I don't share publicly. But the reality is I was a shy person. I was afraid. I was scared. And I did not know it. I was completely unaware. As a matter of fact, I even started my business and was able to grow it to be one of the fastest growing companies in the U.S. and still have this major roadblock, major fear, afraid of social media, afraid of putting my photo online, afraid of video, afraid of hearing my own voice. I thought I sounded nasal. I thought I sounded weird. I didn't want anyone to really hear me. I didn't want to be recorded. And I certainly didn't want to get up in front of my staff. And I was scared and I was afraid. Until one day, Google sent me an email. And they said, would you like to be a certified Google trainer? We have a new program we're rolling out in New York. And we're looking for a trainer. We're looking for somebody to train small business owners on behalf of Google regarding Google's products and services. We know you're an expert at SEO. We see how many accounts you're managing on pay-per-click on Google AdWords. And what we're going to do is we will send hundreds of business owners to seminars that you arrange, that you present at, and let them pay you and you keep the money. Does that sound like something that you would be interested in doing? And I had to be crazy to say no.
Right.
Think about it. Google's sending their customers to me so that I can train them. And if they need services, they would come to me. And they're paying me for it? I got to be an idiot not to do this. So I said, I'm in. Yes. And I didn't really think about the fact that I was afraid of public speaking. So I got the training from them. And then I set the first seminar and 80 people paid to come see me speak. And right before the presentation was about to start, I told my partner, I was like, dude, I can't do this. I prepared for it and I was scared and I was petrified. And I was like, I cannot do this. My entire body was shaking. And he's like, you have to do this. You have to. Everyone paid. We're not refunding them. You're doing it. I said, all right, I'll do it. And let me tell you, I saw the video of it. I was pacing back and forth. I was saying basically, I was totally raw, but I knew my speech so well. I knew search engine optimization and pay-per-click so well that, because I was an expert, once I got started, I started feeling a little more comfortable. But the reality was I was scared. I was afraid. I had no practice, no experience. And so I started to go speak to other speakers and I started to learn what does it take in order to become a proficient communicator in public? How do you become that professional public speaker? And so over the past 6 years, I've been on a journey. I've been on a journey to really try and learn, okay, what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? How do I need to do this? And I started reading books, and I started going to seminars, taking classes, getting coaches. And before you know it, I started becoming really, really, really good at it. I started learning how to engage the audience. I started learning how to convert my nervousness to excitement. I started to learn the trade. And now I am a part of the National Speakers Association, which is an elite organization of professional speakers. It's very hard to get in there. And my goal is to do 50 speaking engagements in 2019. And I'm really, really excited because it's one of the things that I enjoy the most. They say the things that you fear the most are sometimes the things that you'll enjoy the most if you can just overcome that fear.
And that's really powerful. And so much of it is about just getting over that initial hump of the fear. When I talk to other nervous speakers, a lot of times what I hear is that, yeah, they're really nervous and the anxiety really, really, really builds up until right before they get up on the stage. And then a minute into being on the stage or 2 minutes into being on the stage, it's gone and they're in the moment.
Yeah. And it also depends on what state we're in. You can put yourself in a peak physical state right before you get on stage, and you will have so much unstoppable energy. You will have so much positivity. If you're focused on yourself instead of being focused on the crowd, then you're going to always be insecure. You're always going to be nervous. But if you can take your focus, if you can take your physiology, your focus, and then have good positive language, and you can picture yourself succeeding, and you could feel more comfortable because you know that you're the expert in your material, then you're very likely to succeed.
So, Joe, what are you doing in the 5 minutes before you take the stage to get you into that peak state?
So for me, it's about standing in the right way. It's about breathing in the right way. It's about drinking enough water. You see, a 5% drop in hydration is a 30% drop in energy. Most people wait to start talking, and then they take a sip when they get thirsty. What you want to make sure is that you're fully hydrated before you get on stage. Of course, you want to be able to make sure you go to the bathroom so that you don't have to go, you're not squirming in the middle of your talk. But you want to make sure that you drink enough fluids, you drink enough water to make sure that you're hydrated, to make sure that you warm up your voice. I love warming up my voice. I've taken voice lessons, and I always warm up my voice before so that I can have that like warmth and feeling. And then I think to myself, I have thoughts that I think to myself, and I'm like, I am going to crush it. I am going to dominate it. And sometimes I even repeat the first couple of sentences over and over and over and over. So when I get up, I know how I'm going to start, because one of the most important things that you can do is you need to start powerfully, and you need to end with a tremendous amount of power and precision and prestige. People are there to have a show, People are there to have a show. So give them a show. Give them a show. Practice. Don't practice in front of the crowd. Practice before you get to the crowd. The more you practice, the better you'll be. The reason why I'm able to speak so well on these podcasts is because I practice. I've been on over 100 podcasts in the past 2 years. So the more I practice and the more I speak and the more that I get up in front of audiences, the better I become. But I even do it between events. I even do it between podcasts. Sometimes I write down what I'm going to say and then I read it several times. And the more you read what you're going to say, the more it goes into your body, into your mind, into your soul, and it becomes you. And then you listen to it. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's so important to listen to your own talks, because then you can repeat it even better the next time. It becomes very, very powerful. A lot of speakers don't do this. A lot of speakers are afraid to hear themselves or afraid to see themselves. But you have to be able to practice listening to yourself and seeing yourself so that you can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Because when you're in the moment and when you're speaking, you need to be focused on your audience and on your message, not on the mechanics of what you're doing. You can't be monitoring yourself for improvement while you're speaking. You got to do that after the fact, and recording is such a powerful way. And with the phones today, I mean, there's no excuse not to be videoing and audio recording your stuff and then playing it back for yourself.
Yeah, and I always carry around one of these little Zooms or a Tascam or something. You can literally buy a DVR, a digital voice recorder, and just carry it around every time. Put it in your briefcase, put it wherever, whatever you're going to have, and always be recording yourself when you're talking. And then put a repository somewhere. You can use an app called Temi.com, Temi, for 10 cents a minute. It'll also transcribe it so you can read as well what you said. Very powerful.
Yeah, those are some great tools. You're doing a lot of this speaking now. How is it playing a role in your career today? Is most of what you're doing still doing the Google training, or is your speaking broadened beyond that?
So Google stopped the program a couple of years back. Like, you know, they let it run for a couple of years and then they stopped it.
It's sort of what they do with most things.
Yeah, they try different things out. You know, they tried to do it themselves and they realized it was too hard, but they didn't want to start it up again. So what I just started doing is doing my own seminars. And I realized that because we're B2B and our focus is B2B, I really want to focus on LinkedIn. So now I'm not an official LinkedIn trainer because they don't have a program, but I'm extremely proficient in LinkedIn and I am teaching people LinkedIn. And by the way, if you want to be a great presenter, learn not just to present in person and face-to-face, but also learn to present on webinars. I became an expert at presenting and engaging people in real time live on webinars. As a matter of fact, I have a webinar every week that I present on. And it's very powerful to be able to take a crowd of 50 to 100 people and have a conversation with them in real time and engage them and allow them to communicate with you in a very intimate way online from the comfort and the privacy of their own home. It's a whole different dynamic, and it allows me to practice even more often without traveling. I also have meetups where I speak at. I have my own networking events, my own LinkedIn networking events where I talk every single month. I do 1 or 2 meetups, and then I get invited to speak, to MC, to do keynotes, to do workshops. And ultimately what happens is, first of all, I get paid for some of the speaking that I do, and I want to get paid for more of the speaking that I do. But more importantly, when I teach somebody the tools, the tricks, the strategies that they need to have in order for them to be able to growth hack their LinkedIn, chances are a percentage of those people are going to want to purchase one of our products or services.
What I think is so cool about that too, and about what you've talked about, is one of the things we've talked about before is that what technology lets us do today in a way that we weren't able to before is to go out and make your own stage. As a speaker, you used to have to sort of wait for somebody to give you a stage, but that's not the case anymore. You can go ahead and make your own using tools to coordinate meetups, using tools to arrange seminars, providing the webinars. You can create your own environment to share your message and share your story.
Yes, and not only that, I go on Instagram live every day. I go on Facebook live every day. I go on LinkedIn and post videos of myself talking, walking down the street, doing stuff every single day. Each one of those is a speaking engagement. So if you're not doing 3, 4, 5 speaking engagements a day virtually, you're not practicing enough. You have the ability, a captive audience, even if it's a captive audience of 0, you have the ability to present every single day. Not only do you have the ability, well, if you want to be an outstanding, incredible, amazing, unbelievable speaker, you have the responsibility to practice 3 times a day. You have no reason not to. You have the technology in front of you. Learn to use it and start to express yourself. It's powerful.
Well, that gives me one of my 30-day projects for January now. So how does the message that you share on those daily Facebooks differ from what you're doing on Instagram, differ from the video you share on LinkedIn? Or is it all the same?
It's similar. You see, my goal is to help 1,000 hungry entrepreneurs go from frustration to motivation. And I get an idea. And my starts on Facebook because I have my Facebook group and I have a certain audience. And then on Instagram, it's kind of like snippier and shorter. And then on LinkedIn, it's a little more professional. So Facebook, it's more kind of like me brainstorming. I don't always have the perfect idea. I don't have to be perfectly polished. It's more friends and family. It's more fun. It's more playful. And then Instagram, it's kind of shorter and quicker and punchier, but I have a whole different audience over there. And then LinkedIn, it's more professional and more polished. And so at the end of the day, I have my progression that starts in Facebook, moves to Instagram, and eventually gets to LinkedIn.
Interesting. That makes a lot of sense. Is YouTube Live play a part in that?
YouTube is more for the edited, finished versions of stuff. I haven't used YouTube Live because I haven't built up my YouTube presence in the way that I'd like to, but that's a 2019 goal for me to re-establish myself on YouTube. I do have a YouTube channel called growtime.tv where I help entrepreneurs grow from average Joe to CEO. And I've done dozens and dozens and dozens of videos over the years. And now I'm ready to kind of like relaunch it. I hired a videographer and we're going to be shooting a tremendous amount of videos. You know, because I put myself out there so often, I'm kind of like a content marketing machine. I'm able to produce content very, very quickly. Like, think about how many pieces this conversation can turn into.
Yeah, and have those resources that you can turn it into other things. You can reuse it down the road, and you just start building up this entire library. And that becomes really powerful, that they can be turned into other things, whether that's going to be a more polished video, whether that's going to be a book, whether that's going to be an article, whether that's going to be creating new words. Like, what is Mojovation?
Mojovation. So people said, Joe, we want more of Joe. I said, you want Mojo? Yeah, we want Mojo. I said, okay, let me give you some Mojovation. And so that's what it turned into. I don't like motivation. I like Mojovation. I think it's a little bit better.
So we talk about, being this content marketing machine and producing all this content. You also took a talk that you regularly gave and turned it into a book. What was that process like?
So for me, it was about sharing my experience. Every person has a unique experience. Every human being has a unique experience. And I used to say that I wasn't a writer. That was something that I used to say. Joe Apfelbaum is not a writer. I used to say I hire writers. I have 36 writers that work for me full time, but I'm not a writer myself. I don't write. And then I read a book called On Writing by Stephen King. Have you heard of him?
Once or twice.
Once or twice. So he wrote a book called On Writing. Very famous guy, wrote a book on how he became one of the most successful writers in our generation. And he literally wrote something that really triggered me. He wrote many things that triggered me. I remember many of them, but this is the one thing that really hit the nail on the head and made me start writing. He said, if you are not writing 2,000 words a day, you are not a writer. And that just kept ringing in my ears over and over and over. If you're not writing 2,000 words a day, you are not a writer. So from that day on, I decided that every day I will write 2,000 words a day because I am a writer. And that's what will make me a writer. And in the beginning, my writing sucked. But over time, I started building up my proficiency. So when I get into book writing mode, I'm ready to write a book. I just write the table of contents out. And then every single day, I take one chapter and I write 2,000 words towards that chapter. And before you know it, in 20 days, I got my first dirty draft. And then you go into editing mode and you hire someone to help you edit. And then you could have a book done in a month. In 2 months, you have a book done. Then you publish it and have a good day. That's
awesome. I think it's really neat there, too, is it gets to the power of specific goals, too, being able to target to do that number of 2,000 words a day, as opposed to, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write, and I'm committed to writing today. If you don't have that number attached to it, you don't know when you're done. And if you don't know when you're done, it's a lot harder to get started.
Yeah, and also some people say, I'm going to write for 20 minutes. And then you sit there looking at the blank screen for 20 minutes. And then you're like, I can't do anything because 20 minutes pass. And meanwhile, you're just refreshing your Facebook, stalking your ex.
Right.
So instead of saying 20 minutes, say, I will close my door, get into my mode, get into my space. And until I'm done 2,000 words, I'm not leaving, even if it takes all day.
One of the things I tell people, too, is that if you can't think of anything to write, just try to write as badly as you possibly can. Because once you do that, once you commit to just doing something badly, well, then your inner critic gets out of the way. And before you know it, good stuff starts coming out. And even if it doesn't, by the end, you're still going to go through editing.
And not only that, I would add to that if you have nothing to write about how you have nothing to write about. Write the fact that you have nothing to write about, and ad nauseum talk about that.
Exactly. And before you know it, you've got this whole treatise on that, and you've probably started to dive into figuring out why you have nothing to write about it. And there's really interesting stuff that comes out of that too. So, I mean, what can folks really take from your story to try to overcome their own anxiety and move forward?
Everybody is scared. Every single person has this fear. It's natural. It's normal. And if you want crazy results in your life, you can't be natural and normal. If you want crazy results, you got to get out of your mind. You got to get out of your head. They say if you're in your head, you're dead. So realize, I was this person that was shy. I was shy for the first 30 years of my life. I was shy. I was scared. I was petrified. I had all these self-limiting beliefs around me being a speaker. I said, I'm not good at it. I don't know how to do it. I'm a private person. I keep going on and on and on, telling you all the things that I told myself. But the reality is those are all excuses. You either have reasons or you have results. If you want to be able to influence people, if you want to be able to make a mark, if you want to be able to express yourself, if you want to be able to be more complete with yourself, find yourself, influence other people, and take your life and your business to a whole new level, I implore that you sit down and you think about the stories that you want to share and start sharing them. Even if it's uncomfortable, it's going to hurt in the beginning. But the more you do it, the better you will become. The more you study it, the more books you read about it, seminars you go to, join a Toastmasters club, join your local chapter, and start doing small engagements. And slowly but surely, you will find that it's probably one of the most enjoyable things that you can do in your life, because people enjoy what they're good at. And I sucked at it because I never practiced. And when I started practicing, I became good at it. And now it's one of the most enjoyable things I can do.
So, Joe, if folks want to know more about you and what you're up to, where should they go?
Go to my LinkedIn profile. Go to Joe Apfelbaum on LinkedIn and look at my summary. I have links to my upcoming webinars. I have links to my websites. I have links to my podcast. I have links to information on my LinkedIn summary. So go check out my LinkedIn summary. Also, you could visit joeapfelbaum.com, sign up to my weekly newsletter. You can go on Amazon and get my book, High Energy Secrets, How I Lost 95 Pounds and Kept It Off. And most importantly, connect with me, whether it's on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Connect with me. Let me know that you heard the 2-minute talk tips, and let me know that you got value out of this.
Fantastic. And folks can also find all those links to your LinkedIn and to everything else over at 2minutetalktips.com/Joe. So Joe, thanks so much for joining us this week. This has been absolutely fantastic.
I had a blast. Thanks for having me.
Are you ready to get started sharing content on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, or Instagram every day? How can you use Mojovation to take your life to the next level? So go ahead and start by connecting with Joe on LinkedIn. You can find that and more Joe Apfelbaum links over at 2minutetalktips.com/Joe. Have you decided to get started sharing content but just need more content to share? I created a preview for this episode on YouTube. And if you found today's chat interesting or valuable, you can post that preview as your daily content to LinkedIn or Facebook or whatever channel you choose by sharing the link 2minutetalktips.com/Joe Preview. That's 2minutetalktips.com/Joe Preview. Come back next week to hear from sales trainer Stuart Rice.
I mean, how do you romance a refrigerator? There's a story with some refrigerators, and you can always find that way. And that's exactly it, is you want to find a way to convey it in a nice, simple manner, as opposed to having to use a bunch of jargon that causes people's heads to explode.
And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
Two-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.